The worst part about being blindsided isn't the shock, it's the silence that follows. 1 second I was taking notes about the ethics of media narratives, and the next a beautiful blonde woman stood up in front of hundreds of colleagues and declared me her destiny. Destiny. As if we were living in a Shakespearean play instead of a packed conference hall in downtown Chicago. Laughter didn't erupt. Whispers did. Quick, biting, speculative murmurs that burned into my skin. Some smiled knowingly, some exchanged skeptical looks, but most stared at me waiting for my reaction. My pen slipped out of my hand, clattering to the carpeted floor like the sound of a gavel sealing my fate. Her name was Claire Donovan. I knew her, but not well. A rising star in our field, quick-witted, daring, the kind of woman who seemed allergic to silence. Everyone knew Claire. Everyone wanted to know her. And now, apparently, she had decided to make me the centerpiece of her unscripted declaration. "Lena Carter," she had said, her voice trembling but her eyes blazing with something dangerously close to sincerity. "You are the reason I believe in fate." The room gasped. I froze. And the world as I knew it tilted on its axis. I should rewind. Before Claire Donovan turned my professional life into a living soap opera, I was a respected, if somewhat invisible communications scholar. 30 years old, single, practical, neat to the point of obsession. My colleagues teased me about my perfectly color-coded notes and my inability to attend social mixers without hiding near the buffet table. Romance was something that happened to other people. To the bold, the reckless, the ones who didn't mind if their hearts got shattered. Me? I was safer behind glass walls, guarded smiles, and the constant hum of deadlines. And yet, fate, or perhaps just Claire Donovan's audacity, was about to drag me out into the open. The conference hall smelled faintly of overpriced coffee and polished wood, the kind of scent that promised knowledge but delivered exhaustion. I had been halfway through scribbling down a quote from the keynote speaker when Claire interrupted. No one interrupted keynotes. No one dared. But Claire stood unapologetic, her long blonde hair catching the light like a halo that mocked the seriousness of the event. "I'm sorry," she had said, her voice carrying far too clearly, "but I can't sit here another second without saying this. I love someone in this room, and she needs to know it." That was the moment my stomach plummeted. The moment my pulse began hammering against my ribs. And then she said my name. For a while I thought maybe it was some elaborate academic prank, or performance art, or a publicity stunt. But when her eyes locked on mine, blue as a winter sky, unwavering, I knew she wasn't joking. The crowd shifted. My department chair arched an eyebrow. A few students snickered. But most of them just stared at me, at us, like we were enacting a play they had unknowingly bought front row tickets to. I didn't move. Couldn't. My entire body had turned into a marble statue, cold, rigid, sculpted by fear. Claire smiled then, softly, almost shyly, as if the weight of her confession had already been worth it. I should have laughed it off. I should have corrected her, defused the moment, maybe even made a joke at my own expense. But something about her gaze kept me frozen. Something about the tremor in her hands, barely visible as she clenched the edge of her chair, told me this wasn't theater. Claire Donovan had just set her career on fire in front of everyone we knew, and she had done it for me. That night my phone buzzed relentlessly. Emails, texts, colleagues who thought it was hilarious, friends who thought it was romantic. One particularly cruel message. "Well, at least someone wants you." I ignored them all. Instead, I sat alone in my hotel room, staring out at the Chicago skyline, replaying her words until they began to sound less like insanity and more like a plea. Plea I didn't know how to answer. Because here's the truth. Claire scared me. She always had. Not because of her beauty, though she was breathtaking. Not because of her brilliance, though it was undeniable. She scared me because she was everything I wasn't: fearless, passionate, alive in ways I had buried long ago. And deep down, in places I refused to touch, I knew that if I let her, she could ruin me. Or save me. The next morning I saw her again. She was leaning against the hotel's coffee station, a paper cup cradled in her hands, like nothing unusual had happened. Her eyes found mine immediately. "You didn't run away," she said, a smirk tugging at her lips. "I thought about it," I admitted. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She laughed, and the sound was infuriatingly warm. "Then why didn't you?" I could have lied. Could have said I stayed because of my responsibilities, or because flights were expensive. But instead the truth slipped out before I could stop it. Because I wanted to know why. Her smirk faded. Her eyes softened. And for the first time I saw her vulnerable. Because you're the only one who makes me feel real, she whispered. The world slowed. My breath caught. And suddenly the conference, the colleagues, the whispers, they all blurred into insignificance. It was just her. Just me. And the terrifying possibility of what could happen if I let myself step closer. The air between us buzzed with an energy I couldn't name. Standing by the coffee station, Claire wasn't the confident woman who had boldly declared her love in front of an entire auditorium. She looked smaller, more fragile, almost as if she feared I would laugh in her face and walk away. I didn't. I should have. Every part of me screamed for distance, to push her away before this mess swallowed my reputation whole. But curiosity rooted me in place. Curiosity in something darker. Claire, I said, my tone careful, clinical even, like I was dissecting her under a microscope. Do you realize what you've done? Yesterday wasn't some late-night bar confession. You said those words in front of half our field. People who decide who gets published, who gets tenure, who gets respect. Her lips pressed together. I know. Then why? She tilted her head, studying me as though she had been preparing for this moment. Because the truth is heavy, and I've carried it for months. I thought maybe if I said it out loud, if I said it to you, I wouldn't have to drown in it anymore. I blinked. So you dragged me down instead? She winced but didn't look away. I didn't mean to hurt you, Lena. I just couldn't keep it inside anymore. Her words clung to me. Inside. That meant this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment dare, or an act of rebellion against the monotony of academia. This was something she'd been holding, simmering, maybe even suffering over. I hated how that realization cracked something inside me. The conference sessions blurred after that. People stared when I walked into rooms. Some smiled too brightly, as if I were suddenly in on the joke. Others avoided my gaze, whispering behind folders and glowing laptop screens. My name wasn't Lena anymore. It was the one Claire loves. During a panel discussion on media ethics, I barely heard the speakers. My brain kept rewinding, replaying her words. You're the only one who makes me feel real. What did that even mean? By the third day I'd had enough. Claire found me outside on the steps leading down from the convention center, the autumn wind whipping strands of my brown hair into my eyes. She approached cautiously, coffee in one hand, the other tucked into the pocket of her blazer. Are you avoiding me? She asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Her lips twitched, but she didn't retreat. Fair. Silence stretched. The city roared around us, traffic, distant sirens, snippets of strangers' conversations, but between us, the quiet was deafening. Claire, I finally said, turning to face her fully. You can't just rewrite my life because you're restless in yours. Her expression shifted, sharp with offense. Is that what you think this is? Restlessness. Isn't it? No, her voice broke on the word, but she pressed forward anyway. It's not boredom or recklessness. It's not a game. Lena, I've watched you. Every conference, every paper, every panel. You stand there so composed, so untouchable, and I just... She sucked in a breath. I wanted to touch. The honesty in her words rattled me. No theatrics. No smirk. Just raw truth. I shook my head, retreating behind logic. You don't even know me. Her eyes locked on mine. Then let me. That night I couldn't sleep. My hotel room felt too small, too suffocating. I kept pacing, the carpet wearing thin beneath my restless steps. I wanted to hate her for doing this to me, for dragging me into her whirlwind, for making me the center of gossip, for forcing me to confront emotions I had buried years ago. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her vulnerability, her defiance, the quiet plea in her voice when she said she wanted to know me. By 2 a.m., I admitted the truth I had been fighting since the moment she said my name in that auditorium. I wanted to know her too. The next day, I found her sitting alone in the corner of the hotel lobby, scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone. She looked up when I approached, surprise flashing across her face. Lena. My name sounded different on her lips, softer, reverent almost. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding like I was about to defend a thesis I hadn't prepared for. I'm not promising anything, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But maybe we could talk. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere that isn't full of people waiting to dissect every look we exchange. Her eyes widened and for a moment she looked like she might cry. Instead, she smiled small, genuine, and heartbreakingly hopeful. I'd like that, she whispered. We walked down to the lakefront, the night air crisp against our cheeks, the city lights glittering like restless stars. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence felt fragile, sacred somehow, as though words might shatter the tenuous thread pulling us together. Finally, I asked, "Why me?" She stopped walking, turning to face me with the seriousness of someone about to reveal a secret that could alter everything. "Because when you speak," she said, "the world goes quiet in my head. Because you make me want to be braver. Because I look at you, and I see not the mask you wear for everyone else, but the fire you try so hard to hide. And I want to be the one who keeps it alive." Her confession hit me like a tidal wave, terrifying, exhilarating, impossible to ignore. I laughed, though the sound was shaky. "That's a lot of pressure, Claire." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "I don't want you to carry me. I just want to walk beside you." And for the first time in years, I let myself wonder what it would feel like to stop walking alone. We sat on a bench overlooking the dark water, our shoulders almost touching. My body buzzed with awareness, every inch of me alive to her presence. "You know," I said slowly, "you've made my life 10 times more complicated." Claire grinned, her eyes sparkling. "And yet you're still here." I rolled my eyes, but my lips betrayed me, curving into the faintest smile. "Maybe," I admitted. "I want to see where this goes." Her hand inched closer on the bench, not touching mine but waiting. An invitation, not a demand. I looked at her, really looked, the fierce intelligence, the stubborn courage, the undeniable tenderness. And against every instinct I had honed to protect myself, I let my fingers slip into hers. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. But something inside me shifted, opening a door I had kept locked for too long. Claire squeezed my hand gently, her smile blooming like sunrise. And in that moment I realized something terrifying and beautiful. Maybe destiny wasn't something you waited for. Maybe it was something you chose. That night, back in my room, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. I didn't look different. Same brown hair, same tired eyes, same professional exterior. But I felt different. Lighter. Unsettled. Alive. I thought about the whispers, the stares, the emails that would surely follow me home. About the potential fallout, the risks to my reputation, the questions I wasn't ready to answer. And then I thought about her hand in mine, steady and warm, and for the first time I wondered if maybe it was worth it. The morning after our walk along the lakefront, the air in Chicago felt different, charged with something neither of us could name. Claire's hand had lingered in mine longer than politeness allowed, and the warmth of her touch had followed me into the shower, into breakfast, into my carefully organized thoughts. I thought I was prepared for this, prepared for a fleeting crush, a professional mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. But Claire Donovan wasn't fleeting. She didn't make mistakes. She moved through the world like a storm that demanded to be noticed, and I had no choice but to be caught in it. Our first real conversation since the public confession took place at a quiet cafe tucked behind the convention center. No one else was around, just the smell of roasted coffee beans, the low hum of the espresso machine, and the soft clink of cups and saucers. Claire leaned across the table, eyes bright, searching mine. "I know this is insane," she said softly, "and I know I've probably ruined a lot of things for you at work." I picked at the rim of my coffee cup, careful not to meet her gaze. "You've made my life more complicated than I ever wanted it to be. People talk, Claire. They whisper. They speculate. They think we're a joke," she interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. "I know, and I don't care. Not anymore. Because I need to be honest, Lena. I need to know if there's even a chance you feel the same way." I froze. Feel the same way. The words landed on me like a punch I hadn't anticipated. Because the truth was, deep down I did. I had felt it ever since the moment she declared me her destiny in that crowded hall. There was an inexplicable gravity between us, a pull that defied logic, that defied propriety. But fear kept me rooted in place. "I don't know what I feel," I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "And that terrifies me." Because whatever I feel could ruin everything I've worked for. Or it could ruin us. Claire's fingers brushed mine across the table, tentative, gentle. I don't want to ruin you, Lena. I just want to find out if we could be something real. If we could be honest with ourselves. The words were simple. The touch was electric. And in that moment I realized that honesty was something I had denied myself for far too long. Over the next few days our interactions became a careful dance, long looks during panels, shared coffee breaks, clandestine conversations in hallways. No one had to say anything. The unspoken understanding was enough. But the outside world didn't pause for us. Gossip spread like wildfire. Colleagues whispered behind closed doors, and casual encounters with other academics became a minefield of speculative glances. Every lunch, every session, every elevator ride was a test of our ability to navigate curiosity without losing ourselves. One afternoon, while reviewing papers in the hotel lounge, Claire leaned close to whisper in my ear. "You're tense," she said softly. "I'm not," I lied. She chuckled, low and amused. "You are. Your shoulders are tight. Your hands won't stop fidgeting. And your heart? It's racing." I glared at her, but the heat creeping up my neck betrayed me. "You're impossible." "Am I?" she teased. "Or am I just honest?" That night I lay awake in my hotel room, thinking about her words, her touch, the way her presence had a way of unraveling all the defenses I had meticulously built over the years. I wanted her in ways I hadn't allowed myself to want anyone in a long time. And yet, a storm of doubts and fears churned inside me. The tension reached a breaking point during the final day of the conference. A gala dinner was held at a downtown hotel, the kind of event where appearances mattered more than substance. Colleagues mingled, glasses clinked, and music floated through the air, elegant and suffocating all at once. Claire found me near the buffet, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders, dressed in a gown that seemed to capture the soft glow of the chandeliers. My breath caught. "Hello, Lena," she said, her voice intimate, meant for me alone. I tried to respond with casual composure, but my words faltered. Claire's presence was magnetic, drawing me toward her without permission. Later, during a slow dance, we found ourselves alone on the dance floor, the world shrinking to the two of us. Her hand found mine, warm and insistent. Our bodies moved together with an instinctive rhythm, silent communication, a shared acknowledgement of something forbidden yet irresistible. "Why are we doing this?" I whispered, my forehead resting lightly against hers. "Because it feels right," she murmured back. "Right," I repeated, unsure if I could trust my own words. "Yes," she said, her lips brushing against my temple. "Right enough to risk everything." And risk everything we did. The next week, the fallout was immediate. Emails, whispered questions, awkward encounters with people who couldn't understand how two women, both professional, intelligent, respected, could suddenly become the subject of gossip. Some expressed admiration. Some expressed judgment. But the one thing everyone agreed on was that Claire and I were a spectacle, a story that would linger in the minds of our colleagues long after the conference ended. Yet, in spite of the scrutiny, we began carving out our own private moments. Afternoon walks in Millennium Park, quiet dinners in little-known bistros, late-night phone calls where we shared secrets we hadn't told anyone else. It wasn't easy. Fear lingered like a shadow, reminding us that the world wasn't ready to accept our love. But each time I looked at her, each time her eyes softened with understanding, each time her fingers intertwined with mine, I realized that the risk was worth it. One rainy afternoon, after weeks of whispered meetings and stolen glances, Claire and I sat in her apartment, the sound of rain pattering against the window like a soft symphony. "I'm terrified," I admitted, my voice trembling. She took my hands in hers, anchoring me. "So am I. But terror is just proof we're alive. Proof that the Zeus is real." Her words cut through the fear, threading into my chest like light through clouds. I realized then that I didn't want to live in a world without her. Not if it meant denying what we were building together. "Then let's stop hiding," I said finally. She smiled, a mixture of relief and disbelief. "You mean fully?" "Yes," I said, the weight of the decision settling over me. "No more whispers. No more hiding. Just us." Her lips curved into a gentle smile, and she leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. Then I'm yours, Lena. Fully. And with that confession, a new chapter began. One filled not with fear or hesitation, but with discovery, tenderness, and the slow, thrilling unraveling of two hearts learning to beat together. We faced challenges of coarse gossip, judgment, moments of doubt, but each obstacle strengthened our bond, teaching us that love, even when messy and unconventional, was worth fighting for. That night, after a quiet dinner and a long walk along the rain-slicked streets, we sat together in her apartment, sharing a bottle of wine and laughter that felt like it could dissolve the walls of the world. You know, Claire said, leaning into me, I think fate has a sense of humor. I think it's terrifying, I countered, smiling despite myself. Terrifying, yes, she agreed, but also magnificent. Look at us. I looked at her, the woman who had confessed in front of hundreds, who had challenged every assumption I had about myself, who had made my heart both ache and soar. And I knew she was right. Fate, humor, destiny, it didn't matter. What mattered was this moment here with her. I leaned forward, resting my head on her shoulder. It's magnificent, I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The weeks following the conference were a blur of stolen moments and whispered conversations. Claire and I had officially decided to stop hiding, yet public acknowledgement was another beast entirely. We both navigated our professional lives carefully, balancing curiosity from colleagues with the intoxicating intimacy we shared in private. It wasn't easy. Every lunch, every meeting, every hallway encounter carried the unspoken tension of, what if someone sees? But somehow the thrill of being together fully outweighed the risk. One crisp October afternoon, a particularly tense moment tested our resolve. We were invited to co-present at a national symposium on media ethics, a room packed with academics who already knew the rumor of our supposed destiny. I could feel Claire's hand brush against mine under the table as we waited for the session to begin. Her subtle touch sent shivers down my spine. I wasn't sure whether it was fear or desire or both, but I knew I wouldn't let go. The moderator began the session, calling our names, and I felt my heart hammer against my ribs. I glanced at Claire, whose confident smile masked the storm I knew was raging inside her. Halfway through the presentation, a colleague, one who had been especially skeptical of our whispered romance, posed a pointed question. Do your personal connections ever affect your analysis? My first instinct was panic. This was our professional reputation at stake, yet Claire squeezed my hand under the table and gave me a tiny nod. Encouragement without words. I can speak only for myself, I said, keeping my voice calm, but personal connection is inseparable from any study of media influence. Our experiences shape perspective, and to ignore that would be disingenuous. That is true for Claire and for me. Yes, but it strengthens our understanding rather than undermines it. Claire followed with her own response, her tone poised, passionate, unwavering. Together, we turned what could have been a humiliating moment into a demonstration of our intellect and integrity. By the time the session ended, applause filled the room, not for the gossip, but for our expertise. And as we left the podium, we shared a quiet glance of triumph, a private acknowledgement that we could face the world together. That evening, Chicago's skyline glittered as we walked along the Riverwalk, holding hands openly for the first time. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and the river's cold undertones. People are still talking, I murmured, leaning into her warmth. And let them, Claire said, tilting her chin to look at me. They'll talk no matter what. But what matters is us. I couldn't argue. In her presence, every whisper, every sideways glance, every shadow of judgment faded into insignificance. The world narrowed to her smile, the curve of her lips, the heat of her hand in mine. Yet, even as we embraced our love, challenges arose. Misunderstandings, old insecurities, and the scrutiny of colleagues tested our bond. One evening, a misinterpreted message from a colleague sparked a fierce argument. You're hiding things from me again, I accused, pacing the apartment, frustration and fear coiling inside me. I am not, Claire shot back, her voice tight, almost trembling. I would never hide anything from you. The tension escalated until finally, both of us were breathing heavily, eyes locked, hearts raw. Then slowly, the anger began to melt as Claire stepped closer, her voice softening. Lena, I know you're scared. I know you've built walls to protect yourself. But you have to trust me. I swallowed, the lump in my throat making words impossible. Slowly, I reached for her hands, and as our fingers intertwined, the argument evaporated not because it was forgotten, but because we acknowledged the truth. Our love required vulnerability, even when it was terrifying. The real test came months later when we decided to attend a national conference in New York. This time we chose to be openly affectionate. Hand-holding, subtle touches, lingering glances. The reactions were mixed, as expected, but we no longer feared judgment. After a long day of presentations, we found ourselves alone in Central Park, the city lights reflecting in the calm water. "Remember the first conference?" Claire asked, her voice light but tinged with nostalgia. I smiled, recalling the public confession, the chaos, the initial shock. "I thought I would die of embarrassment. And yet here we are," she said, squeezing my hand. "Stronger than ever." I nodded. Stronger because we chose each other, despite everything. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. "And I would choose you 1,000 times over." The months that followed were a delicate dance of public acknowledgement and private intimacy. We learned each other's rhythms, flaws, and desires. Small gestures, a hand on the small of the back, an unspoken glance across a room. A shared cup of coffee at dawn became the language of our love. And then one evening everything shifted. We were celebrating the acceptance of a joint research paper when Claire's face suddenly went pale. "Claire," I asked, concern lacing my tone. "Too need to tell you something," she said, voice quivering. She took a deep breath. "I applied for a fellowship abroad. In Paris." My heart sank. The timing couldn't be worse. We had only just begun to navigate the complexities of our relationship, only just begun to embrace the safety of mutual trust. "Paris?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, a year-long fellowship. It's an incredible opportunity." She paused, looking at me with apprehension. "But I don't want to leave you behind." We sat in silence for a long time, the celebration around us fading into a blur. Finally I spoke. "Claire, I want you to go. This is your dream. But we need a plan. We can't pretend this won't be hard." She smiled, tears glistening. "I don't want to pretend. I want to be honest with myself and with you. And I want us to survive this if we can." And so we made a pact. Distance wouldn't break us. Trust would be our anchor. Love would be our constant. The year abroad tested us in ways we hadn't anticipated. Time zones, long nights, moments of jealousy, and moments of intense longing. Yet every challenge strengthened the bond that had begun on that chaotic day at the conference. Video calls, letters, surprise visits, they all became rituals, reminders that our connection transcended geography. And slowly the whispers, the judgment, the skepticism faded. Our colleagues, initially amused or critical, began to recognize the sincerity of our relationship. Our love was no longer a scandal. It became a testament to courage, honesty, and commitment. Finally, the day arrived when Claire returned from Paris. I met her at the airport, the same nervous, fluttering anticipation I had felt months before still alive in my chest. She ran to me, arms outstretched, laughter spilling freely. "Lena!" And I caught her, holding her close, feeling every inch of the distance collapse into a single moment of pure connection. "I missed you," I whispered, my lips brushing her hair. "And I missed you," she replied. "Every day, every night. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere." We walked home through the streets of New York, hand in hand, the city alive around us. For the first time in months, the world felt manageable. No more whispers, no more speculation, just us together. Claire turned to me, her face soft with emotion. "You know," she said, "I always believed in destiny. But now I think destiny isn't some cosmic plan. Destiny is choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, even when it's terrifying. And I choose you." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I choose you too, Claire. Always." And in that moment, the chaos of the conference, the fear, the judgment, the distance, all of it faded into insignificance. We had survived, and our love had thrived. The world would always be unpredictable, sometimes cruel, sometimes absurd. But as long as we had each other, nothing else mattered. We stood on the sidewalk, the city lights casting a warm glow over our faces, fingers intertwined, hearts aligned. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, unshakably, undeniably happy. Claire leaned into me, her forehead resting against mine. "So, Destiny?" she whispered with a teasing smile. "Destiny," I replied, pressing my lips to hers in a soft, lingering kiss. And as the night embraced us, I realized that destiny wasn't something given. It was something we had found and chosen together. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.